Hello, it's Tayler Silfverduk, registered dietitian specializing in celiac, and I've also been living with celiac for over 10 years. And today I want to talk about some of the common restaurant red flags you might see as a celiac going to dine out, so that you can kind of just keep your ear to the ground and just be aware of what certain things might mean and when it comes to dining out and kind of evaluating the risk for yourself. So that said, I'm going to just kind of dive into some of those restaurant red flags. As we go along though, and if you think of any restaurant red flags that I didn't mention, or if you've noticed one of them and you're like, oh my gosh, I've definitely experienced that, let me know in the comments down below. It's just always great to kind of compare notes. And that said, let's dive in. So these are some of the restaurant red flags to watch out for. First thing, sometimes like if I ask about gluten-free options, if a restaurant comes back to me and says, oh, we have sugar-free food, that immediately to me implies that staff doesn't understand what gluten is. And that is a big red flag for me, because if they don't know what gluten is, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to be able to have a safe experience. But I am going to have to do a lot more legwork on checking everything and making sure everything is gluten-free, because they don't really know what they're looking for based on what I've already heard from them. So this is a red flag. Doesn't necessarily mean that being safe at this restaurant is going to be impossible, but that I might be having to put in a lot more effort than maybe I want to, just simply because they're not fully aware of what gluten is. Next one is staff is annoyed by questions. This is a big one, especially if I'm calling a restaurant before I go in. If the staff is, seemingly annoyed, or seemingly trying to get me off the phone, or seemingly trying to like yes man me, if you will, this is a potential sign that they might not take me seriously. This doesn't necessarily mean they won't take me seriously, but it is a nod in the direction that they might not. So this is a red flag to keep your eye on. The next thing is, if I'm asking about the ingredients in a particular dish, if they're like, oh yeah, that doesn't have milk, that's another red flag. And I know a lot of people with celiac oftentimes can be lactose intolerant. There is a high rate of that. If you want more kind of research and support and information on lactose intolerance with celiac, I'll leave something down below about that. But I know a lot of people are lactose intolerant, and so they might be asking questions about milk when they're ordering or talking about menu items. But if restaurant staff is confusing the need to have something not have milk in it with also, not having gluten, that is just a red flag in my mind, that they might not know what actually is going on and what I'm really looking for when I'm trying to find safe food. So it is a little bit of a red flag in my mind. It's not like the biggest red flag, but it is a little one that kind of just helps me kind of keep my guard up a little bit more than I might otherwise. Another red flag that might pop up when you're dining out is restaurant staff potentially being confused when you say you have a gluten allergy. So I can't tell you how many times I've called a restaurant and I've said, hey, I have a gluten allergy. I'm just calling to see what I'd be able to order. And it's like dead silence on the other side of the phone. And it's almost like crickets are playing. You're like, so like, can we get this conversation going? But you can clearly tell they're kind of like trying to figure out what I'm saying or what I'm asking. And I will say, I do personally make the choice to say gluten allergy when I'm dining out instead of saying I have celiac and need my food to be gluten-free, because restaurant-wise, restaurant staff are trained on cross-contact and managing food allergies. That's what they're familiar with. They're not necessarily trained on autoimmune diseases and medical diets related to that. And so I just prefer to use gluten allergy, even though I know celiac is not a gluten allergy, because I feel like it's still appropriately communicates the precautions that I need taken, but it communicates it in a way that I feel like is quicker for restaurant staff to pick up on. I know a lot of people have varying opinions. I respect your choice and what you choose to say, but I find that my success rate with being understood and knowing what's going on at restaurants increases when I say gluten allergy rather than celiac. But sometimes I will say I have celiac and need my food to be gluten-free. It just depends. This is a side note, it's not a red flag, but the biggest green flag is when I say I have a gluten allergy and the person's like, oh, do you have celiac? And then I'm like, oh, so we know what I'm talking about. That's a green flag. Kind of went on a tangent there, but the red flag is they're like completely confused when you start talking about needing to be gluten-free, because that implies that staff might not understand what gluten is. It implies that they might not understand why someone might need to be gluten-free, why it needs to be taken seriously, etc. Another red flag is confusion when you ask about cross-contact protocols. So if you're like, hey, I just want to know, do you guys have cross-contact protocols? How are you guys managing allergies in your restaurant? And they're kind of like confused, or they're not sure, you also get that dead silence. That also is kind of a red flag to me, that they might not have cross-contact awareness, or the cross-contact training in that restaurant just isn't as strong, or maybe the majority of their staff isn't trained ServSafe-wise or whatever, and they're just not that aware. And if that is the case, that doesn't necessarily, again, mean I can't dine out safely there, but that I'm going to have to do a lot more work, a lot more advocacy, a lot more speaking up. And so that is going to play a role in my decision on whether or not I want to go there. And it is a red flag. It does kind of influence my guard to like be up a little bit more. The next one is if there's no manager, chef, or cook available to speak to. And this is also generally something I will ask for specifically if I'm getting a lot of red flags on the staff that's answering the phone, or the staff that I'm talking to just not being really aware of what gluten is, or not being really aware of cross-contact or that kind of thing. If I'm not able to then talk to a chef or a cook or a manager, then I'm not even able to get reassurance from a higher level employee, or an employee of higher status that would be more likely to know. And that is a really big red flag for me. That actually is probably a deal breaker for me, especially if I'm following all these like lines of safety and it's just kind of like hitting dead end after dead end after dead end. So this is a big, big red flag. If you're talking to restaurant staff and you're not really getting any clear answers from them, and then you ask if you can speak to a manager, or you ask to speak to a chef or a cook, and then you still can't even talk to them, or if you talk to them, they're like not even sure either, big, 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 big red flags. The next red flag that we have here is if they have a shared fryer for gluten-free foods. This is a big pet peeve of mine. I see this all the time on social media where people run into going to a restaurant. They say the fries are gluten-free, but the fries are literally fried in oil that is also frying onion rings that are breaded, or some other thing that contains gluten. If this is the case, and this is how they're labeling things, and they're reassuring you as a celiac after you've told them all of the things that you need, that it's totally fine, that's a big red flag. Because they don't understand, and this ignorance that they might have is now a risk to your safety. So if they're telling me that something is gluten-free but it's in a shared fryer, that's a big red flag that there's not a lot of cross-contact awareness, or not appropriate training on how to manage cross-contact, and then that is something that I'm going to need to make sure that I'm keeping my eye on, or on high alert on. It doesn't necessarily mean that I can't eat there safely, but that a lot of what they might tell me to reassure me cross-contact wise is likely not going to be fully accurate, or I just need to be, just extra on my game when it comes to that scenario. And that's going to factor into my decision. Pairing with that, if they have gluten-free French fries and they're like, it's gluten-free, and it's in a fryer that has gluten, if they also tell me that heat kills gluten, also a red flag that tells me that they're not fully appropriately trained on cross-contact management, and that they aren't fully aware of what needs to happen for managing allergens and reducing allergen cross-contact. And so if they say this to me, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to be able to eat there safely, but I am going to have to do way more legwork and way more education, way more advocacy, way more speaking up, because this is not true. And actually, if you sign up for my gluten-free dining course, I'll talk about that more at the end if you're interested. I actually have a recording and video of me calling a restaurant. You get to see me actually deal with that in real time, where they tell me that they don't take cross-contact precautions because heat kills gluten, and you get to see me deal with that in real time in that video in the gluten-free dining course if you're curious. But this is a red flag, and you want to make sure that you're dealing with that if you are going to continue on in that restaurant. Another red flag is if they aren't able to give you complete or very assured answers. Like if they're like, I think so, or I think that would be okay, or I think they can do that. You want to know they can do that. either they can do it or you're not going to order, or you'll order something else. And I will always say that too. If someone seems to be unsure, I will say, like, I'm totally fine with ordering something else if this is not possible, or I'm totally fine with not ordering or just having a drink if you guys don't think you can keep me safe, because I'd rather do that than be sick for the next couple of days, because I'm someone who is a very symptomatic celiac, and I tend to have a pretty severe response, unfortunately, in my world. So I'd rather do that than, get sick. Because this like lack of certainty is indicating they are uncertain about how they can keep you safe, and that is a red flag, and you want to try to address that as soon as you start to run into it. Okay, so those were quite a few red flags that we covered. I hope that this was helpful. I hope this was eye-opening. I hope this gave you some things to kind of keep your feelers out for. I do want to emphasize, though, that these red flags serve as important data points to help you evaluate the overall safety of a restaurant, and also to help you evaluate how much work you're going to have to do, or how much skill or knowledge level you're going to have to bring to the table in order to stay safe at these restaurants, in order to help you make an informed choice on whether or not you want to go there. But I want to say that only you get to decide how to factor these red flags into your decisions on, like, if you're going to go to a restaurant or not. So it's a data point, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can't eat at that restaurant. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to eat at that restaurant and deal with that red flag. It's just information that you can use to make an informed choice when going to these restaurants. So I hope that this was helpful. If you think that I missed any red flags, which I probably did, there are tons of red flags. These are the ones that I could think of when making this video. But if you can think of another one that I didn't mention, or if you've seen one of these red flags and you have an experience you want to share, feel free to let me know in the comments. I love hearing back from you guys. And if you have any questions about these red flags, let me know. All of that said, I do want to invite you, if you are looking for more help when it comes to dining out with celiac disease, you want more hand-holding, and you want more guided steps on how you can do this in the safest way possible. As a celiac dietitian and fellow celiac of 10 plus years, I did create the Gluten-Free Dining course to help you do just that. It is 4 self-paced modules covering 4 steps that I take and teach all of my clients to take when it comes to minimizing the risk of dining out. I cover all of this in detail, plus I give you simulations and practice scenarios so you can get confident. I'm going to also give you baby steps to kind of help ease you in if you're someone who is especially nervous every step of the way. These 4 steps are also 4 points in the dining out process that will give you an opportunity to bail in case something isn't safe. So it's essentially 4 verifications, kind of really helping you reduce that risk and making sure you're staying as safe as possible. This course also comes with a 60-page restaurant dining guide that includes scripts, cheat sheets for common restaurants and cuisines that you might see in the United States, and cross-contact precautions to ask for. It also includes a whole training on how to order gluten-free adult drinks at restaurants, because that's a completely different ball game. And I cover how to do that in this course. And you'll also learn how to apply these concepts when you're ordering food from delivery apps like DoorDash, Grubhub, and also a bonus, what to do and how to know if you were glutened at a restaurant, because I know that can be a little bit tricky for people, whether you are symptomatic or asymptomatic. I talk about that in this course as well. So if you're interested, if you want this help, that course is available to you. I'll leave it down below linked in the description box so you can learn more and decide if this is a good choice for you. Absolutely no pressure, but it is there if you're looking for some extra help. And all of that said, again, if you found this video helpful, if you found it just validating, go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button for more content from a fellow celiac dietitian. And all of that said, I will see you when I see you.